Oh, wait. Are we? Wait. Okay. Hold on. Oh, that's it. There. And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat.
They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Well, hello and welcome to the Flames' first game of the season. It is opening day for the Calgary Flames. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks. You can subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network as the new look Calgary Flames, the Kadri-Huberdeau, Nazem Kadri, Kadri-Huberdeau-Weegar debut era begins tonight with a new extension with Daryl Sutter, a newly minted extension from Daryl Sutter, and a whole bunch more as they get started right off the bat with the best team in the National Hockey League last year. And we say that because of the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. And so we're going to break all of that down. Joining me is from the Fireside chat, friend of the show, all ready to go, Dan Stevenson. How are you doing? Are you excited about the year? What is going on?
Well, you know, as Beasley always asks, are you ready? And I would say, yes, I am. I'm ready for the season. I think it's going to be a good one. 8 new players on today's opening day roster that weren't there last year.
That's true. Yes. It's also the Kevin Rooney era while we're at it. It is also the and as well, see, we've got Kevin Rooney newly minted there as well. So there's Huberdeau, Kadri, Weegar, and Rooney, and then Michael Stone, technically. Do we count?
No, he was on the opening day roster last year, but Ruzicka was not.
Right. So yeah. So what? Yeah. So yeah. We can include all of him as well. So we should not disrespect Kevin Rooney here at all. While we're at it, but lots of new faces, lots of new names here in the lineup here as they get ready where they're about. I'm going to guess as of now. It's 5:15 Pacific. Game scheduled to start at 6:30. There'll be the intros. Beasley will do his thing, and there'll be a whole bunch of other stuff. So we'll have it'll probably start around, I'm guessing, 7:50 local time.
And those that get there early night get free beer.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice for the. Yes. Is it the real good beer, or is it just beer?
They have original 16 of the Dome now. They got rid of the cold urine, which they called Budweiser. So if you like original 16 and what they bring and some of the other brands they've got, then it's better than what they had.
Well, that is good for those who do that. Just a second here. Let me just hit that. Okay, there we go. And then I'll fix it there. Let's start with there was a lot of news that happened over last weekend that we haven't had a chance to really sit down and chat about with the Flames. First of all, They did sign Mackenzie Weegar to the 8-year, $70 million extension. Or let me make sure I have the numbers right on that. But they did get Mackenzie Weegar. They got that done.
6.25 is the cap average per year.
Yeah. Same as Travis Sanheim, by the way. The exact same that Travis Sanheim signed today. I don't think that I think, for me, just after the whole Johnny Gaudreau situation, I think for Brad, getting Huberdeau and Weegar done now before the season, even though you could argue that Weegar could have been a rental just for the year. I think that's a huge weight off Treliving's back to not have to go into next off season dealing with significant contract questions, and I think it just puts this team in a bit of a stable place for the next few years, which I think helps Brad a lot because there's still a lot of other work to be done. So I think getting the Mackenzie Weegar deal done, good thing, and I think it's a good contract. I know that everybody's talking about the age and what's going to happen in a few years from now. Right now, this team is in win now mode, and you have to pay this type of money to be in win now mode.
And I mean, when your highest paid defenseman is making 6.25, I think you've got a really good contract structure. Remember as well, Kevin, that in about 2 years, we're expecting the cap to go up about $5 million. So while some of these contracts that don't look great now, we're going to have more room in the cap for those. And I think, if you can win, like you said, they're in win now mode. If you win, nobody cares that you're paying Huberdeau as much as you are. Nobody cares you're paying Weegar that. And they also become easier deals to move if you need to, if those guys have a ring.
Yeah, because you get that Stanley Cup experience. So I think that was the first thing. And the second thing that was done, I mean, I don't think that we need to get into a lengthy discussion. I think we've talked a lot enough about what we expect from Mackenzie Weegar. We'll get into some of the nuances of that more here, but I don't think in terms of that, I don't think there's anything much more to get into that. Daryl Sutter got a contract extension for, I'm going to use multi-year. So
it's a 2-year deal.
Yeah. Which Brad says is multi-year. Brad Treliving said it's multi-year. He is correct technically because multi is more than one. So it's this year, next year, and the year after with Daryl Sutter. I also think that is another load that you can get from this organization that you have Daryl Sutter for 3 years, and you get another place that you have stability in the back end because that this is going to be Daryl Sutter's team, and it's not they have to win this year. You've given yourself a little bit of leeway to get to where you want to go, and it's really in where the Flames window is, which is in the next 3 years.
Yeah, I've said I think the Flames have a 3-year window here with this core and these contracts. So I think you've now got Daryl locked up for all 3. Whether he stays or not is another story. I mean, there's that old saying that you're hired to be fired. And because of that, I don't know if he'll be here. Also, if they win the cup, say next year, I don't know if Daryl stays on after that. I mean, he said when he came back that he's here for one reason and one reason only, and that's to win the cup. I don't think necessarily if he leaves, he's done as a Flame. I mean, he's doing some coaching consulting, whatever that means in Anaheim before he came here. But I think it gives us that window of 3 years. And if Daryl leaves, I don't think he's going to be fired. But if he chooses to leave early because he's achieved his goals or whatever, no harm, no foul. We got what we needed out of him.
What could happen is he could end up in a consultant role here with the Flames and sort of mentor Kirk Muller from above. If Kirk Muller is the option to go forward as the new coach, I could see that.
And I think I've said to you in the past, I think that's their plan. I think Muller is being groomed to be the next guy. And I think we're already seeing that, this summer when they were playing some split squad games. Instead of sending Mitch Love as the head coach over there, which they normally do for the AHL squad, they sent Kirk Muller. So I definitely think that Kirk is the heir apparent. So remember when they hired Jay Feaster to be the assistant GM and we all knew he's just being brought in to bide his time? I think it's almost the same idea here.
Yeah. I think it's kind of except except in that case, we knew that they were pushing Darryl out the door, and they are preparing to have Kirk Muller.
It's a succession plan.
It's a succession plan. Now, I guess the other question is around this would be, when do we get the Brad Treliving extension?
Well, Brad, I think, just got re-signed last year or the year before. So, I mean, I don't think there's any rush to sign him, but I think even now, as much as things look good, I don't know that you really re-sign him until you see how this team performs. Because there's been a lot of years, Kevin, that we've looked at this team on paper and said, the Flames look good, the Flames should go deep. And then the Flames are out in one round. Or the Flames look good, the Flames should go deep. And the Flames don't make the playoffs. So I think you really have to see, yes, it looks like Brad turned things around, but if there's still no upward momentum, maybe it's time to bring in another guy. So I think you have to at least wait till the end of the season to get that done.
I see your point, but on the other hand, I think he pulled off this summer. I think it was
hey, I'd give him GM of the year right now.
Yeah. And I think he at least deserves an extension. And my understanding was he was up this year, because I thought it was him and Darryl had the same contract.
Could be. I think he's got one more.
Just looking here. Yeah, it does end after this year. So I do think that is something that they will need to address and fix at some point here. I don't think I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think you have to do that now in order to keep him from walking. I think, you can get those done. Generally, GM contracts are pretty easy to negotiate. So I think, between now and the end of the year, it'll get done. I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, I'm not either, but I think that's something, just, I guess, some other things.
Do you think he should do 1 year? Or do you think it should be multi-year for him?
I think you just keep him with Darryl. I think it goes side by side with Darryl for two more years. You have Darryl, and then you see where they're at, and maybe at some. I mean, Treliving's not that old. I mean, I think he can do this. I guess one of the questions is, he's 53, so if you give him 2 more years, you give him to 56. He still can do the job. I guess one question would be what about some of the other people around this office, around it? Like, what do you do with this? Is Craig Conroy a succession plan? Because I like for Craig, I don't know if I see Craig Conroy going anywhere else to be a GM.
Well, and from what we've heard is he's had some interviews. I think he interviewed in Buffalo and things like that. And, if he wants to, great. I think it says a lot about him. But we've got such a big staff here, Kevin, with Conroy, with Brad Pascal, with Chris Snow. A lot of people forget that Don Maloney's here. Like, I think there's enough great hockey guys, even if 1 or 2 of them do move on, you can bring other successful hockey guys in. I think Michael Stone's a guy that when he retires will be part of that team as well. Like, I think there's enough good hockey guys around here. We don't need to worry too much about that. But I agree. I don't see Connie going anywhere.
Yeah. And I think they have eyes. I also think they have eyes for Matt Stajan in some sort of role with the Flames eventually. I think he's just starting to groom himself with the Hitmen. And eventually I think he will be moving up the ranks.
Well, and I could even see when Darryl retires from coaching that he becomes an assistant GM or a special assistant to the GM or something like that. Like, Darryl's a guy that I don't think ever wants to be out of hockey.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think he absolutely loves the game. I just don't think that anyone is going to want him to be the GM of the team.
No, but I think if you bring him in like Don Maloney, who's sort of that senior advisor to the GM or the president of hockey ops type guy, I think those would be great roles for Darryl.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that for sure. And then a couple of other things that happened. The not surprising thing, you talked about Michael Stone. He did turn his PTO, air quotes, to an official 1-year contract, 2-way. I think, did you saw that video that the Flames did with Darryl Sutter at the ranch over the summer, right? You saw that.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you see the picture of Michael Stone there as one of the several pictures that he had?
I did.
Yeah, I think Michael Stone was just hiding on the ranch. That's where he is over the summer, and then he comes back.
He's a ranch hand.
He's a ranch hand. Yes, exactly. So that I don't think was much of a surprise.
I think Michael Stone will be a Flame as long as Michael Stone wants to be a Flame.
I agree. Yeah. But it did lead to placing Juuso Välimäki on waivers, and he was claimed by the Arizona Coyotes. And Brad Treliving said that they tried to trade Välimäki. They could not get according to Treliving, no one offered, but Arizona was the only one that claimed. Honestly, I think for Välimäki, I hope the best for him. I just don't think ultimately the Daryl Sutter way was going to ultimately work for Juuso Välimäki. I think he needs a different perspective. I still think he will be a good defenseman. It's just going to take a different perspective to get him to where he needs to be.
This might be a crazy thought. I mean, most people don't relish playing in Phoenix. I think Phoenix is the best place for him. This is a guy who's a tweener in the NHL who will probably make their top 7 this year. I believe he's on their opening day roster. What a better place to crack an NHL defense than in Phoenix, right? They're not strong. You're a guy who's had some injuries. You're a guy that's had maybe some discipline issues, that sort of thing. I think he got suspended last year in the AHL because some discipline issues, if I remember. What a better market to go to and get that shot in the NHL. It's not like, you're going to get pushed aside because, we're trying to make the playoffs. Okay, kid, just go down to the A. I think for him, this is the best chance to show what Juuso Välimäki can be as an NHL defenseman.
Yep. Yeah, I think you're right. I'm just seeing if he's on the ice right now for the Coyotes against the they're down 3-0 to the Penguins as we're doing this. I'll have a look and see if he's on there.
Yeah, we'd have to, I'll see if I can check their box score because he could be on the roster but not dressed as well.
Yeah. But and there's another way to do that as well. But yeah, I think that and then the other thing that happened is Nicholas Milosh was placed on waivers. Another one of the free agents. He was a first day signing for the Calgary Flames. Sent down to the Wranglers. I kind of
expected a consolation prize. Couldn't get Gaudreau back, so let's bring in Milosh.
Yes, and Kevin Rooney and Nicholas Milosh were the consolation prize to Johnny Gaudreau. I kind of sort of expected him to make the team, but Stone is there, and Connor Mackey will be the 7th. It turns out to be the 7th defenseman.
At least start.
Yeah. This is something that I think can transition for the year. So looking at the lines, Välimäki is a scratch, so not playing tonight
on the NHL roster, which you wouldn't have been here.
Yeah, exactly. And then if and when they trade Jacob Chychrun, he's going to get another little bit of a long look, I would think, if and when that happens as well. So lots of things for the Flames. I mean, in a pretty dramatic overall off season. And I guess now that the dust is settled and Gaudreau and Tkachuk are out and Huberdeau, Kadri, and Weegar and Kevin Rooney are in, and are the Flames better, worse, or the same than last year?
I think it depends how we look at it. I think that they have a lot of the same skills on the ice. I think that from that point, they might be kind of the same. I think where we're going to see the big difference is behind closed doors. I think we got rid of some guys that maybe felt entitled. I think we got rid of some guys that maybe didn't want to put in the work here, guys that we saw as a perpetual problem. I mean, Johnny's been here for how many coaches, right? And we've heard a number of rumors over the years that these guys weren't listening to coaches. They're driving coaches away. I think we've got a culture shift in the room. And I think that's really, if there's a big change, it's going to be sort of those intangibles that we don't see. Getting that culture shift, changing some personnel, that sort of thing. So overall, I think that they're a better team.
I think the chemistry on the ice is going to take some time. I do kind of, to be honest with you, I know that they have a home stand here, or 9 of the first 10 are at home. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of a stumble out of the gate, just to get people together, just to get these lines to get the chemistry together. I mean, Lindholm and Huberdeau haven't played in a regular season game together before. I do think we got some chemistry from Kadri, Mangiapane, and Dubé, but I still think that that's going to need some work. I'm not sure if where Chris Tanev is at health wise, but Tanev and Weegar is a new pairing, and you still have the situation with Oliver Shillington. That's we don't know what's going to happen there, so that's another thing going on with the Flames as well. But I think by the end of the year, I think that this is going to be this team. This team, I think, will be more prepared to face an Edmonton Oilers than they were last year.
They're better playoff build.
They are much better playoff build, and I think that there's going to be a desire, there's going to be a willingness to battle, and not a willingness to yak and do all the publicity stuff that went with one of the players that left. And it's just a bit more of a professionalism. I mean, Kadri will be a talker, but I think Kadri, I'm more confident that Kadri will back up his talking on the ice than what I think ultimately turned out to be a brand ambassador Matthew Tkachuk was. Sorry, did I say that out loud?
And not just, I think, to me, not just back it up, but I think Kadri's going to know when that type of play is useful. Like, I think with Matthew last year, he was going out, targeting guys, being that, sort of pain in the ass, but he didn't know when to stop. And he didn't know when we'd had enough of that, and he needed to be something different. And I think part of Kadri's age, he's going to know when he needs to be different types of players. There's times for the sandpaper. There's times for the playmaker. There's times for different kind of faces of Nazem Kadri.
Yeah, he's been through a little bit more in his career, too. And I agree with you. I think Matthew never really really got down to know when to stop. Yeah, I agree with you. He never figured out. And the one thing that keeps ringing back in my mind last year, Dan, that Daryl said near the end of that playoff series with the Oilers is Daryl said maybe their wingers are better than our wingers. And I thought some people would have looked at that and said, that was a motivation. But I wonder, looking back, if Daryl was thinking that, just said that as a factual statement. The Oiler wingers, ultimately, the Evander Kanes, the Zach Hymans, those two were better than what Gaudreau and Tkachuk were.
I think those guys were better than, let's say, Gaudreau, because they were playing a complete game. Or not Gaudreau, I think Tkachuk. They were playing a complete game. Chuck was playing one facet of that game, and you can't do that in the playoffs. So I think they were definitely doing better there. I think even Gaudreau, I mean, last year was a little bit different. When has Gaudreau showed up for the Flames in the playoffs, right? That's always been the biggest knock against him.
Yeah, he scored the winning goal against Dallas, but he never had, and I'm not bashing him, I'm just, that was the only significant moment that he had with the
and that's
Flames.
Another reason I think this team is better. I mean, Daryl says it. We play 82 games that really don't matter just to get to the playoffs. I think this Flames roster with some older players, some guys like Kadri that have won the cup, guys that have gone deeper, like even the Florida team last year, and learned some lessons from their defeat. I think, Kevin, this team is better built for adversity. And we've seen in the past when the going got tough, the Flames got going. Right? I mean, there was a joke on our show a couple of years ago. They're playing 2 periods. Pick the 2. They're playing 2 and not 3, and that's why they were running out of gas and letting other teams back in. I think this team's going to be better built for adversity.
Yeah, I do agree with you. So I guess for the regular season, where do you think the Flames end up? Is it reasonable? Is it important for the Flames for you to finish first?
In the division or in the conference?
In the regular season, do they need to win the Pacific Division? Is that important to you?
I really don't care where they are in the regular season. It's about playoff performance. I think they will win. I think that there's really not a lot of competition in the Pacific this year, and I think that's going to play the Flames' favor. But I really don't care where they win in the regular season. It's about their playoff performance.
Yeah, see, I think the Oilers are going to win the Pacific because I think the Oilers are going to get off to a better start than the Flames, and I think ultimately that will be the end of it. But I think that I wonder if that will be a bit of advantage for the Flames. That playing on the road in the playoffs seems to be, I don't want to say easier, but I think it's just a little bit of a less of a load. And I think the way Daryl wants to play in the playoffs is more conducive to play on the road than at home, where I think sometimes there's a motive to be, to be exciting and to be wide open and all of that sort of stuff. So I wonder, I think that, getting to the second round, and I'm expecting them to get to the second round at this point, and I'm expecting that we're going to have a second round battle of Alberta. I think that the Flames will be more conducive for that.
I don't think they're going to finish less than second. Like, I know you do your other, days on the Canucks, but I think Vancouver's going to take a step back. LA is going to take a step back. Vancouver might take a step up, but I don't see anybody but the Flames and the Oilers that run 1-2 in this division.
No, I agree with you. I personally do not think the Canucks will be. I personally don't have the Canucks in the playoffs. That's me personally. But I see the Golden Knights probably being the Flames' first round opponent. That's my expectation. I think it's going to be 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I think they got to figure out their goaltending first, but we're not here to talk about the Golden Knights.
Yeah, no. But I think ultimately that's kind of where we're at. But I guess for me, the one issue or concern, and I wonder where you're at. I still think they need one more scoring forward. And I do think they'll get that scoring forward. I think Brad has already said that he wanted that scoring forward. They just couldn't fit it there. But I do think they need one more scoring forward. That's my one concern this year. Is that a concern of yours?
We had a long discussion about this when we recorded our season preview episode this past Sunday. The Flames need not just a scoring forward. I think that they need a top 6 right winger. I mean, if we look right now, our second line as it's expected to play out is Nazem Kadri, Andrew Mangiapane, and Dylan Dubé. I'm not convinced if you're going to be a playoff team that's going deep, Dylan Dubé is your second line winger. I think Toffoli can be a first line winger. I have no problem with that. But I don't know that Dylan Dubé is that guy. Blake Coleman's not that guy. Trevor Lewis is not that guy. So when Trevor Lewis is your third line right winger, I think you definitely need some more depth there. So, yeah, I think it needs to be – I don't even know if it needs to be a scoring winger. I look at that line. I think it could even be a puck-moving winger. They just need to get an offensive top 6 right wing.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think you want to move – I would personally be more comfortable moving Toffoli down in a lineup and finding – a higher level winger.
And I think that's a lot harder to find, though.
That's true. Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I'm not super. I mean, we talked about Trevor Lewis in the offseason, and we sort of expected him to be one of those transports from WinSport where the Calgary Wranglers will be for most of the year and to the Saddle Dome. And, he's on the third line with Backlund and Coleman. And
I think Lewis is a good enough NHLer, though, Kevin, and Daryl likes him enough. He's not getting sent down. I think, if anything, he's your 13th forward.
Yeah, that's fair. But that's what you said, right? He's your 13th forward. He's right now, as of tonight, playing in your top 9. So that's a bit concerning. But,
yeah,
at the same time, Sonny Milano had an opportunity. It didn't work out for him. Cody Eakin had an opportunity. It didn't work out for him. So, I mean, they're going to have to look through the trade route to fit. And there's probably some options, and I think that's something that we can discuss over the year. But I think, for me, that's the one issue that I'm concerned about. The second one, to me, is last year. You talked about this last year. The Flames got away. I wouldn't say got away, but the Flames were very fortunate in terms of health. They didn't get a lot of injuries. That's
fewest man hours lost.
Yeah, that's not, you can't expect that every year. So what the depth on this team is going to be like going forward is going to be huge. You've got Chris Tanev that fought a number of injuries, of course, and we talked about that. Let's not forget Nikita Zadorov had a pretty significant injury last year as well in the playoffs. So injuries and the depth of this team is still something that I think ultimately is a bit of a concern in terms of what the new players or the depth forwards are going to be. So what is Connor Mackey going to be like? What is Adam Ruzicka going to take that next step? What that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I also look at this as I guess depends where you think you need to fill that depth. If we lose a guy in our top 6, sure, I think the Flames are going to struggle there. But that's where it's somebody else's spot to take. Maybe Blake Coleman steps up then. I think he can be serviceable enough for a couple weeks. If we're losing somebody in the depth of this forward group, though, I mean, you've got Clark Bishop, you've got Matthew Phillips, you've got, some of these older veterans on the farm, Walker Dewar, even Radim Zahora, who they just brought in, who I think are good enough guys that you can bring them in to fill a bottom 6 role. I mean, Clark Bishop's played in the league. Radim Zahora's played in the league. Like, I'm not too worried about filling depth positions. But I think, if they lose Huberdeau or they lose Lindholm, I don't know that you solve that problem by bringing up Connor Zary or Peltier. Like, I think you need guys internally to step up. Maybe then you're looking at Kevin Rooney to be playing a, top 6 wing position or something like that. So I think I'm not as worried about that. I think we have guys that can step up unless someone's out for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, up the middle, you got Lindholm, Kadri, Backlund. I still think Backlund in a pinch can be a top 2 center in this league. I mean, Nazem Kadri filled in last year for Nathan McKinnon and had an over 100-point season. So I'm not too worried about that either if you lose Lindholm. If Huberdeau and Toffoli go down, I am concerned on the wings a little bit more about.
But I think that's true of any team's top 3, right? I mean, if McDavid goes down, Edmonton's screwed. Like, anytime your star goes down, you're screwed.
Yeah, no, for sure. But that is the one challenge that I think that didn't happen last year with the Flames is the injuries and could happen this year. Now, the other interesting question with the Flames this year is Markstrom Vladar. And Vladar did not get correct me if I'm wrong, I think maybe one home game last year, but it was most of the year he played most of his games on the road. I think you're going to have to play him at home at some point. And I guess that's going to be one of the other questions is how much do you play Markstrom this year? I still don't believe, and maybe this is me, and, I think a lot of people looked back in that Oilers series and said, okay, he played too much and he was too tired by the time he got to the Oilers series. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. I don't think that it was an issue of tiredness. I think there was so many other issues that were going on there. I mean, he was an issue, but I think it was so many other things going on there. But I do wonder how much you play Markstrom this year and how much you give Vladar. Do you give Vladar a little bit more this year?
Markstrom's 32. He started 63 games last year. And the Flames, I don't think, knew what they had in Vladar last year. And I don't think Daryl knew what he had in Vladar last year. Daryl has been very complimentary of Dan Vladar in the preseason. I think he's realizing what they've got there. I think you don't see if everything goes well and goes the way this team wants, Kevin, I don't think you see Markstrom play more than 60 games. I think Daryl is ready to give the starts to Dan Vladar. And I think you'll see Vladar start 20 games at the very least.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of am. That's kind of where I'm at there too. So,
I mean, when was the last time you heard Daryl compliment his backup? And we've heard that a few times already in this preseason.
That's true. Yeah, he barely knows the backup's name. So, I suspect we'll get Markstrom for most. We should get Markstrom for pretty much all of October. You've got Colorado, at Edmonton, Vegas, Buffalo, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Edmonton to start the year.
Do you start Vladar early and give him the Buffalo game? Or do you keep Markstrom rolling?
I'm in the Peter Labardia. I go to the Peter Labardia school of thought on that. I don't think you play your backup against the Bedard Bowl teams. I think you got to make sure you get those wins against Buffalo.
Yeah, and I think, Daryl has always been a guy who I think is referred to his goalie for how much they want to play. And I think a lot of starters want to play more than they should. And the Flames have just started their whole goaltending department. It went from Jordan Siglet to a goaltending department. I think because of that, you're going to have more consultation this year among everybody as to who's starting when. You might have a guy like, well, we've only got 2 of them, but Markstrom, who says, I want to play every game I can. And maybe they say, you know what, you've played 3 in 6 nights. Let's sit you down, or, you want to play, but it's not best to do that.
Oh.
Goaltending staff, you're going to have more on that, not just, does Mark, you want to play?
Yeah. And we've talked, there's a lot of talk around Ian Clark and what Ian Clark has been in an event with Vancouver, but I think overall, I don't think the Flames goaltending group, whatever you want to call that, has gotten enough credit for how they've developed goaltenders. I mean, I can't say that I've seen Vladar much before he came to the Flames, but it certainly looks like his game improved. And I think Dustin Wolf continues to take a really good trajectory. I think the way and how they're researching goalies and how they're finding goalies, I think that's been an underrated aspect of the Flames overall, is that goaltending development they've done really well there overall. There's some good depth there.
Yeah, and I think, they've had some stinkers. I mean, we had Mason McDonald, we had, Leland Irving, we had Matt Keatley. Like, we've had a bunch of stinkers over the years that just didn't go anywhere, going all the way back to maybe Brent Cron because of injuries and things like that. We have Tyler Parsons, who hasn't panned out because of injury. Like, it's not really his fault. John Gillies never really worked out, but you need to take goalies to find that good one. And I think you mentioned Dustin Wolf. I think the big thing we're going to see with Dustin Wolf, he has a veteran partner this year in Oscar Dansk, and I think that's really going to push him at the AHL level.
Yep. And I think another conversation we'll have to have is what they do with him coming up, because I think the goaltending situation going forward with the Flames, I think, is quite fascinating with Markstrom, Vladar, and Wolf, because Wolf will need a contract next year. So,
and Vladar's an RFA at the end of this year, and I don't think you get him for less than $1 million. So, are you willing to put that money in, or do you let him walk away?
Yeah, that'll be an interesting question. But we can.
And when we talk about developing goalies, I mean, let's even go back to David Riddick, right? A guy who never got signed and never got drafted, got found out of the European leagues and brought over here. I think we could argue maybe he wasn't a full-time NHL starter, but really, was given a lot of development by the Flames.
Yeah, I wonder with Riddick if it was this regime, if things would have been better for him. I looked back at that game against that debacle of a game that against the Oilers after the whole Tkachuk, Cassian, we need to fight everything and all of that sort of stuff. I look after that game against the Oilers, or I think 9-4 a couple of years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago. That was, to me, his game was going really well until that game. And then that game, he never was able to get his game back.
I don't know that Riddick's ever been a guy that I'd rely on for 60 starts, which you need from your starter. I think he's a great tandem guy. I think his best year was when he was in a tandem with Talbot.
But I agree, probably a 40-game goaltender, but he never, just that whole incident with the Oilers, that whole situation.
No, I don't disagree. If you were to say as the Flames, screw Markstrom, Wolf is the future, we want a solid backup for him, I think David Riddick's the kind of guy you put in that role, but I don't think David Riddick is an NHL starting goaltender for a playoff team.
No, I agree with you there. So that I'm with you on that for sure. I don't see that going anywhere there. Yeah. I guess now, so I want to, can we have a conversation about, maybe some players that will surprise. I want to talk about Kevin Rooney, because there are some people on Twitter that have been really critical of Kevin Rooney already. And I'm not exactly sure why. I think he does exactly what the Flames have asked him to do. He's a serviceable bottom 6 forward that provides speed into your lineup and provides some versatility. I think he's going to be a bit of a pleasant surprise for the Flames this year. I really do. I don't he's not going to be a superstar. That's not what I'm saying, but I think he's going to be a guy that does exactly what the Flames want, and I think he's going to be better. I think he might be one of those guys that the Twitterite people, a lot of people on Twitter are going to be like, he's awful, but Daryl is going to continuously defend because he knows exactly what he wants from Kevin Rooney.
I think Kevin Rooney to me is the cheaper version of Derek Ryan. I was never a fan of Derek Ryan at $3 million or whatever they're paying him. At 1.3, and I've had discussion with people on Twitter as well. At 1.3 million, what do you want from your fourth line center? Who would you rather put there? And no, you don't want to put Zari there. No, you want to put any of those guys. They're not going to develop playing fourth line minutes. I think for the role he's being asked to fill, Kevin Rooney is going to be just fine at 1.3 million. Why not?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at there. I mean, like it was a cheap option. I mean, yeah,
And if it doesn't work, you put Ruzicka in. Like, there's no risk on this deal. He's an NHLer, right? We know that Rooney can play at the NHL level. Is he playing in your top six? No, but he's an NHLer, just like Brett Ritchie or Lewis or any of those guys. If he doesn't work out, he becomes your 13th forward.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought process on that. Is there anyone else that I kind of like in terms of, I guess, who may break out or may have a good year this year that you're sort of like keeping an eye on?
I really think this could be the year of Andrew Mangiapane. I think playing with Kadri and depending on who's on that wing, I think Mangiapane could be among the top 3-point getters for this team. I think he's at that age, he's at that contract now where we could really see, and I know he had a great year last year, but I think Monge could really break out there. And you mentioned not sure if Toffoli's a first-line winger. You might even see Toffoli and Mangiapane swap spots at some point if that happens.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I do think that there's some chemistry with Kadri and Mangiapane. Just there feels like a little bit. It has the ability to cause a lot of problems on the ice for opposing defensemen and I think in terms of, I think Kadri will help Mangiapane's two-way game, which I think is another thing. I still think the Flames want to see a little bit more from him there. But yeah, I think that's one other guy. Another guy I'm curious about, who I'm curious about is that pairing of Rasmus Andersson and Noah Hanifin.
I was about to go there.
So I thought they had a really good regular season, but against the Oilers, they really struggled. And
but who didn't? Who didn't struggle on this team against the Oilers?
No one, to be
Sean
fair.
Monahan, because he didn't play.
And Chris Tanev for 3 games because he also didn't play.
Right? Like when we say that they struggled, and I'm asking this, I'm not trying to be facetious, but who didn't struggle? Like the entire team struggled against the Oilers. That's why they lost.
Yeah. I guess there's a couple of ways to look at this. I think this year, one of the things I wonder, because I think what happened also when Tanev went down, you had to reset your defensive pairings a little bit, and you kept Anderson and Hanifin together, which was fine. But I wonder if at some point you see some different looking pairings at some point this year. So you see a Tanev-Hanifin pairing, or you see an Anderson-Weegar pairing, just to get people familiar with everybody else. And
Kevin, I think you'll see a lot of those mixes starting to happen on special teams. Like, I don't think you have Weegar, Tanev played together in all scenarios. I could see maybe Weegar, Anderson on the power play and Hanifin, Tanev. Like, I think that's where you can do some of that shuffling.
Yeah, that's kind of because I think you do need to shuffle your pairings a little bit just to make sure that you have that chemistry down pat, which I think was part of the problem there. I mean, you're right. Everybody struggled against the Oilers, but I think part of it is just trying to make sure that you get that chemistry together.
I think that was part of it, and I also think part of it was depth. I'm not convinced that Oliver Shillington is your top 4 guy. So I think, getting him to play a bigger role when Tanev went down was a problem. If you look at Weegar, Tanev, Anderson, Hanifin, this is one of the best top 4 the league. I'm convinced Zadorov is worth the money. But I think if Zadorov and Shillington are your bottom 2, it gives you a lot more flexibility there. And if there is an injury, as we talked about earlier, I think you can have someone step up temporarily, but still have 3 guys to keep the boat afloat.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know when we're going to we're going to see Shillington at this point this year, but I think that'll be an interesting. It'll be interesting to see where
And
he
you,
is.
you were mentioning Hannafin. I think this is the year that we could see Hannafin break out. A lot of people forget how young he is. He's like 24. I mean, he started in this league early. I think
He's younger than
like
Anderson.
Yeah,
Is it?
he's still a young defenseman. I think that and I've seen last years of Hannafin really breaking out. I think that Hannafin, it could be the guy on the back end. I mean, we're already expecting great things from Weegar. I think Tanev's at the age we know we're going to get there. I think Hannafin is the one guy that we could really see a breakout on the blue line.
Where are you with Rasmus Anderson? What are you expecting from him
this year?
Yeah.
I'm expecting, I mean, he's 25. Hannafin's 25. I'm expecting as a 25-year-old, he's still got some growth, but I think he's a great second pairing defenseman. I've always thought Raz played better with a veteran, and I think Raz still has some learning to do, and that's why maybe Tanev or Weegar is a great partner for him. But I don't see any reason not to play Raz as your number two. I don't see any worry about him. I think very much like Kevin Rooney, he has a role and he plays that role well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think both of them can make a step this year. I do think Hannafin is. I agree with you. I think people forget how young Hannafin is, and what he can do.
I think Suns fans criticize Anderson a little bit because he's not the offensive defenseman, and people love offensive defensemen. I think Anderson's real role is to settle into being more of a two-way defenseman who can do some offense and some defense. But I think Suns fans don't look as highly on those defensemen. They either don't like big hits or big slap shots.
He's I want to say he's kind of a Tanev light, but I don't think he plays the same way as Tanev. He brings but I think that's sort of that.
But when he's on the ice, I'm not worried about defensive liability, right? He's a good defenseman who can play defensive hockey. And we're seeing some teams who have these defensemen that are almost another forward. And when the puck goes back to them, say in the offensive zone, there's nobody there to get it, or that defenseman's way up at the hash marks. Like Anderson, I think, has good positioning. Anderson, yeah, he makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But for a 25-year-old, I can't ask for much more. Do I think he's going to turn into a top two? I'm not so sure. I think we might be seeing kind of the upper end of Rasmus Anderson. But even at 4-5 for however many more years, I'm happy with that as a number, second pairing guy.
Okay, let me throw a question at you that might be somewhat controversial, but I haven't heard it yet. But we've acknowledged the fact that the Flames need at least a top 6 winger. Are you willing to give up Rasmus Anderson to get it?
I think they'd be more likely to give him Noah Hannafin. And I think Noah Hannafin would get you the better return.
See, I think
Noah Hannafin has the better shot, and I think a lot of teams want that defenseman with the shot. I think that also he's a lesser he's got less time on his contract. He's got 4.9 for 2 years. Anderson's got 4 years, and I think teams might want to have the shorter contract, especially if it's a rental, and then re-sign after that. I think that Hannafin's the easier deal to make if you're the Flames, because nobody wants to bring in long-term money right now, generally.
No.
So, yeah, I think, and I think, this is the thing, is we talk about having to acquire, you've got to give to get. And I think Hannafin is really Hannafin or Anderson are really the only roster piece you could give. But my worry there, Kevin, you get rid of Hannafin and you bring up what? Big Z? Like, I think we need to figure out what Shillington's going to be doing this year before we can make that move. Because Stone Anderson is not my second pair.
No. And then we also have to see what Connor Mackey is this year as well.
But even then, I think Mackey's a third pair guy at best. So, okay, we move Hannafin, and then it's either Big Z and Anderson, or Stone and Anderson, or Shillington and Anderson. Like, I think you need to know what Shillington is and if he's coming back before you can pull that trigger. I don't think that Mackey Anderson is a second pair for a team that thinks they're going to go deep.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. And I'm not comfortable with to be honest with you, I'm not super comfortable with not comfortable with the idea of trading Hanifin at this point right now. I'm comfortable with Tanev, Weegar, Anderson, Hanifin as the top four, and Zadorov with the law firm of Mackey and Stone in the bottom six. I'm fine with.
Considering what the Flames were able to add last year, and we can debate, if it was worth paying the price for Yarncroke, but let's call it Yarncroke and Toffoli without moving a roster player. I think if they need to fill that spot again, they could do it if they're willing to trade drafted capital. I don't think you need to move a roster player.
I guess it depends on when you want to make that move, though, too, right? And it's usually by the trade. And Tree Living doesn't want to get things done at the trade line on it. He likes to get it done before.
But I also don't see the need to make a big move like that in September unless your team, or in October or November, let's say, unless your team is really stinking, right? Like, I think if we can, even if we don't have the best second line, if we can kind of float that offense by committee up front, which I think we can with this lineup, I think you can get away with that hole for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tree Living has been known to be shrewd about his moves. So I'm not incredibly worried that there's going to be a disastrous trade or anything like that. He'll find someone.
And I think you also might wait, Kevin, until someone's in cap trouble, or somebody really needs to make a deal where you might be able to get a better deal. Hey, we'll take some money off your hands, or we'll run it through a broker and absorb that for you, and maybe get a better deal that way.
Yeah. So there are options on that for sure. And the other thing, I guess, is in terms of looking at this team and then call-ups. The first one that will come up is Jacob Pelche, because I think he's the top prospect that everybody is watching.
I disagree.
Well, I think let me reword this, because I was going to go deeper on this. I think that this is the one that everybody has the perception that is the top prospect. But I got to be honest, I was really impressed with Connor Zary. I thought Connor Zary, from what I saw, he showed some versatility. He played center, he played wing. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe, Dan, you maybe think I'm nuts, but I wonder if Connor Zary is the first call-up.
I disagree. I think that I've always been a guy who wants to over-ripen my top prospects in the AHL. And I don't know. I think Zary, Pelche are going to be our top line in the A. I don't know how much benefit you might give those guys if they're coming up to, say, a third or fourth line role in the NHL. I would rather those two stay in the AHL and run that league and do really well there, being that, top fish, the big fish in the small pond and the small fish in the big pond. Now, if you need them to replace a top six guy for a week, maybe. But it's not the team's not going to get a good sense of what those guys are. They're in Calgary. We're going to see them all the time, that sort of thing. I think if you look at the history of this Flames team, you look at the history of Brad Treliving, you look at the history of Daryl Sutter, I think a guy like Radim Zahora is the first guy called up, or Clark Bishop is the first forward called up, because I just don't know what benefit you get. Yeah, fans want to see them, but at the same time, I'd say, well, you want to see them? Sunday afternoon, go see them, right? Like, I think we have
tickets are available at all Ticketmaster outlets.
Yeah, and probably, for free at the co-op, because they're not selling a lot of them. Like, I think that there's less need now for this. Let's see them. We can see them. There's a game this Sunday at 1 p.m. and the following Monday at 7 p.m. Go see them, right? But I think that there's more benefit a lot of times to keeping the hot prospect in the AHL. I've always said, Kevin, you got to bring up the right guy for the role you're trying to fill. If Lucic goes down, I don't think you bring up Zary. That's a different role, and that guy's not going to get a lot of time. But maybe at that point you're bringing up a Matthew Phillips, or a Walker Dewar, or one of your guys who you think their upper limit is a depth forward. Let's see how they do in a depth role.
I see your point. I see your point there. And I think Zary and Pelche, I think probably,
Of the two, though, I think Zary's more likely to come up. Daryl didn't seem like he thought that Peltier had a great camp.
I think the word he said, I think he used the word conditioning on Pelche. I heard that word. I guess for me, I guess my point in that conversation is I do wonder, I think in terms of the top prospect in this organization right now, I think it might be Connor Zary. It might not be Pelche at this point. In terms of like who's that. But I guess other than Dustin Wolf,
I don't
Dustin
want to say anything until the puck drops in the regular season. I mean, Zary lost a lot of time last year too due to injuries, so who knows? Maybe that comes back to bite him.
That's true. That's fair. But I did like what I saw from him in camp. Now Zahora
and Kevin, also GMs and coaches need to know how to motivate guys. Maybe they know that calling Peltier out like that's going to kick his butt and he's going to be better. Like, Daryl's a guy who knows how to motivate. So maybe that wasn't him calling out Jacob. Maybe that's his way of motivating Jacob.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear it as a call out. I just thought Daryl was being honest and said that conditioning of the NHL was something he needed to work on. That was the way that I read Daryl talking about that.
And I think there's also a new guy in that upper echelon now. I think this team's really high on Cole Schwindt. And I think if they're going to give sort of that upper echelon of top prospects a look, I think Cole Schwindt is going to be among that group.
Yeah. Now, with Raheem Zahorna, I'm trying to make sure I say his name right.
Radim.
Daryl said he struggled during the preseason game. I would imagine getting a bit more acclimatized will be better for him. I don't, and there's also Ben Jones. Ben Jones is there, and I think they signed him. I think he's a guy that they can bring up as well.
Yeah.
You got Bishop there as well. So you're right in that sense.
It's sort of like, look at the Buddy Robinsons of the past, right? The Robinson always came up. He was with the team for a week or so. He was always serviceable. We never looked at Buddy Robinson and said, wow, this guy really messed things up. He was that sort of serviceable tweener guy who the Flames would bring up when they needed a forward.
Yeah. 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 You're right. I see your point on that. More, I guess, see, it's funny, being in Vancouver here and, hearing about when we talk about the Canucks, it's all about making sure they get the top prospect, up into the lineup. And I think for the Flames, it's a bit different because it's about role. With the Canucks, it's, trying to get other people up there as well.
They're in different stages of their franchise, right? And I think, remember too, last year, the Stockton Heat, now the Calgary Wranglers, made the playoffs for the first time in a while. And I think the Flames are going to want that team to be competitive. So again, would you rather have Jacob Peltier playing third line minutes against, the Buffalo Sabres, or playing first line minutes against the, Coachella Valley, whatever the team's called now, and really getting that top line experience? To me, I think you want to play a guy where you see them in the lineup. If they're going to bring in a young guy we haven't seen before, honestly, I think it's Matthew Phillips. I think at 24, you got to either know what you've got with this guy or cut bait.
Yeah. I got to be honest. I mean, he's a guy I can see them bringing up, but I don't know. I don't
think he stays here, but I could see him get that. And, I honestly think the only reason they brought him back is he's a Calgary boy, and it helps that for that Wranglers team to sell tickets to see the Calgary boy.
Yeah. I just don't think we're going to really see Matthew Phillips long-term in a Calgary Flame. I just don't. I don't see it. I know I'm not disputing the guy's skill. I just don't think he's a fit in this organization.
But he had a great year last year, again, playing on that top line. So I think if you're going to bring up a young guy, I think that's who they might bring up. But I think Zahora, Bishop, Ben Jones, even a guy like Walker Dewar, who we've seen some time up here in the past at 24, I think those are the guys you see over Schwindt, Kearns, Zary, Peltier. I think, those four. And Kevin, what do you do if they come up to the NHL and then they don't do well and they go back to the AHL and now they suffer because of that call-up? We've seen that happen as well, where they lose their confidence or something like that. Like, I think you're almost better to just keep them running in the A, doing what they know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, and it's a good point.
It's why people have said bring Dustin Wolf up. Why bring him up to sit on the bench? Like, I'd rather he stays in the Wranglers and sees some pucks. That's his job.
Yeah, lead the Wranglers to AHL success.
Yeah,
and then he'll have
exactly. And if you want to see them as a Flames fan, you don't need to go to Stockton. Just buy a ticket for Sunday afternoon. You can see them all you want to.
Yeah, where are tickets available? Where are they playing? Yeah.
Right. But I think that's the thing is I think a lot of times fans have wanted to bring them up so they can see these guys. And I hear that a lot from our listeners. Oh, we want to see so-and-so. Well, go see them.
Yeah. There is such a interesting facet. It's an interesting thing because it's a real fascination, and I get it, wanting to see young guys, the young players in the NHL. But you're right; they have to be. You have to have them ready. You have to make sure that they're ready. And
I said for years, Sam Bennett should have had more AHL seasoning. Like I think the Flames have already shown us sometimes that you rush a guy up, it's not good for his development.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if that whole Sam Bennett situation changed the philosophy of what the Flames were thinking about. Now that you triggered that thought because he, you look back at that Sam Bennett trade and he, Treliving said we both did something wrong, and I think maybe that was it. Maybe put him in the AHL, and because he's a high round pick, that is tougher to do. I think in terms of PR, but it's probably the best thing for them to do.
Yeah, but like you're talking about Vancouver, right? Again, they kind of need to do that. You need fans to buy something. So let's give you the prospects. It's a rebuild time. And you have different times in your organization that you need to do different things. But when you're, the Calgary Flames, and I think a team that has a legitimate shot at the Final Four this year, why rush the prospects?
Yeah.
And especially when this team is getting older. I mean, we can't deny that all these guys the Flames are bringing in, Kadri-Huberdeau-Weegar, they're older guys, right? We can't be looking at a 30-year-old to be leading this team to greatness 3 years from now. So let's develop the AHL guys slowly so they're ready when it's their turn.
Yeah. And the other thing I just was thinking about, too, in terms of, and maybe we'll spend some time on the defense here in a little bit here, but the waiver wire is going to be really active this year because there's a number of teams still in a cap crunch. So there may be some opportunities to snag someone on the waiver wire if you are in need of someone. That might be a better opportunity than you don't have to bring someone up from your roster. If that's it, you know what I mean? Like they did with Zaharna, right? I mean, there's going to be other players.
Well, and I think honestly, that's why Nick Milosh was sent down because now, so for listeners of your show that may not know, when a guy clears waivers, he can be brought back to the NHL for 30 days or 10 games, whatever comes first. So I think by the fact you snuck Milosh through, now you can bring him up when you need him, and it gives you a little more flexibility for your first call up on D.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see the Flames carrying less guys. Like in the past, we've seen them carry 7 or 8 defensemen. Why? The guys you need are just down the hall. It's not like we got to go through that whole song and dance of getting them from Stockton to here. So I think you'll see them kind of carry 7D, 13 forwards for the majority of the year.
Yeah. I guess the first defenseman would be call up would likely be Milosh. Is there anyone else that you're seeing down there that you could see getting a look up?
I honestly don't think Zari stays here. I think they're doing a bit of a cap dance potentially. Mackey. I think Mackey will probably end up being sent down because again, I think it's better for his development than being the number 7. But I think that if you're going to make a call up there, I think Nick Milosh, Nick DeSimone, or Dennis Gilbert. Those are the 3 guys I'd bring up. I'm looking for a veteran number 7. I mean, I'm not bringing those guys up to replace Tanev, but if I'm willing to shift everybody up, I think 27-year-old Nick DeSimone, 25-year-old Dennis Gilbert, or 25-year-old Nick Milosh are the first guys I'm bringing up. Maybe Pullman, but I think when you're in a veteran mode, in a win now mode, you're looking for older, more reliable guys.
Yeah.
And I think the Flames want the Wranglers to be competitive. And if that's the case, again, you don't want to be cherry picking their top guys every time you need a call up, right? You bring up the Buddy Robinsons who, you know what, they're not going to miss them.
Yeah. Is there a player or someone that the Flames are ultimately going to miss?
Of the guys that left in the offseason?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that the Flames are able to, I think you'll have new favorites, right? You might have liked Gaudreau. I think you'll like Huberdeau. I think you might have, liked Tkachuk. I think maybe you become a Toffoli fan or a Mangiapane fan. I think there's enough talent here that the Flames aren't going to miss them. Now, if one of those guys wins the cup, which I don't think Columbus is going to do, but let's say, for example, Florida goes further than Calgary, it might sting a little bit. But I think, this year you might miss him, Kevin. But if we're looking back 5, 10, 15 years from now at the history of this team, I don't think anybody really misses them. It's another Flame that leaves.
Yeah, I wonder if this team will miss Gabranson, though, a little bit. Not like this is a massive loss, because you're not paying him 4 years and $4 million. That's just you just don't do that. You can't do that.
No, I think based on what was on the table, the Flames made the best choice to walk away.
Yeah. But I do think there's a lot that there was a lot of, there warts in the game for sure, but there was a lot of things that he did bring that I'm not sure they have yet, in terms
No,
of.
but I think Stone can bring a lot of those things at $750,000.
Yeah, that's true. At a much cheaper rate. I just don't know if Stone is as good of a penalty killer as Branson was. I don't think
he needs to be. I mean, I think we have other penalty killers there. I mean, I think Big Z's a good penalty killer, right? I think Anderson could be a good penalty killer. I think we can fill that role internally.
Yeah. That's the only one I think that they'll truly. I think that's the only thing that I think that they will truly. I mean, the losses were significant, but I mean, and Tkachuk and Gaudreau, don't get me wrong, but I think there's some things with Gabranson I could see the team missing and adjusting a little bit. And
I bet if we asked Daryl about that, he'd say, "We'll just take less penalties. Problem solved."
Yeah, that's what he said against the Oilers.
Kevin, if we don't take him, we don't have to kill him.
Yeah, that's what he said against the Oilers. Just don't take penalties. Don't do it.
But again, I think sometimes the Flames were in that position because guys like Tkachuk were going out there trying to stir up crap, and then we had to pay for it. And I think the players we're bringing in can play smarter hockey, which might lead to less penalties. Let's track that during the season. Let's see if the Flames end up with less penalty kill minutes this year.
Yeah, I think that will be interesting for sure. And I think it will be interesting, 2 of the 3 games. I know that, I think everybody's on the same page. They wish a little bit more games against the Oilers just for the fun of it. But 2 games this month against the Oilers, we'll see where they're at there. I think just to see how they play against them. And,
I think this opening week is going to be a really good benchmark for this team. I mean, you start the season against the defending Stanley Cup champions. If you think you're a top team, then you've got to perform against those guys. You've got the Edmonton Oilers. I think there's a lot to be proven against the Oilers. You've got the Vegas Golden Knights, who the Flames have historically struggled against. I think this is going to be a real week for this team to show who the Calgary Flames are coming into the 2022-2023 season.
Yeah, I agree. I think this will be a statement for sure. Is there anything else we need to discuss in terms of with the Flames that
you asked where they would finish in the Pacific. What do you think? Where do you think this team finishes in the NHL? Do you think this is a Western Conference Finals winning team this year? Let's do it this way, Kevin. I don't want to take over your show, but are they a top 2? Are they a final 2 team?
At this point, with this team, I would still objectively have to pick the Oilers because they've done it already. Until they beat the Oilers, I can't put them in the Western Conference Finals.
Are they a Final 4 team? Do they play in the Western Conference Finals and lose?
Well, no, ultimately, so the question is, do they get past the Oilers? This team at this point, I do not think can get past the Oilers. I think that they're better, but I just...
So you just think it's a matter of when they play the Oilers?
Yeah, it's tough. I kind of feel like this is sort of a little bit like the other teams that have been through that hump where you have to get over it to prove it, like the Washington Capitals for years over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Until you do it, I can't pick them to do it. That's the thing. And I feel like right now, the Oilers are the bump for them to get to the Western Conference Final.
Okay. So let me phrase this differently then. If the Flames go out in round 1 to the Oilers, is this year a failure? After all the changes, if you go out earlier than you did last year.
Well, I think they face the Oilers in the second round, but if they are a first round, I do think at least I think okay. Let me say it this way. Right now, as the team is constructed, I do not think that they can beat the Oilers, but I think they're going to have. But I do think Treliving will add something. I think not getting at least to the Final Four is a failure this year.
I think if you go out in the second round again to whoever, you're saying we haven't made any changes since last year. We haven't moved forward. I think that's a failure. I think they have to make the Western Conference Finals to show themselves in the league that, you know what, we lost all these guys. We're a better team because of it.
Yeah.
And whether Treliving goes out and trades a guy, whether Treliving promotes a guy from the AHL like Peltier or Zari and they end up taking that spot, I have faith he knows. Yes, he's made mistakes. Who has shown me a GM that hasn't made mistakes on the job? But I trust that he will construct this team the right way this year.
Yeah, and I think they have the right coach to get them over that hump.
I agree.
It's just a matter of figuring out how to not let McDavid and Draisaitl. And I'm not, when I say that, Oiler fans, I'm not saying that your other players aren't very good, but the reality is McDavid and Draisaitl were the two most dynamic players in that series.
Yeah. But you'd say the same about this team, right? I mean, Edmonton's probably saying, how would we stop Huberdeau and Lindholm from scoring us? And they're not going to be like, oh, we got to watch out for that Lewis character.
Yeah. Watch out, Trevor Lewis.
Right? If Trevor Lewis is lighting you up, you probably shouldn't be anywhere near the playoffs.
Yeah. And you look at the Oilers, the one thing I still, I have them as the favorite, but they're not without flaw. I'm not saying that.
I think the biggest question for me with the Oilers is goaltending. I don't know that Campbell Skinner is the goaltenders they're going to take you far. And I mean, Mike Smith, as far as I know, is still out. I don't think he's past his physical, but even then, you don't want old man Smitty as your goalie this year. So I think the Oilers definitely have some flaws. And I think it's a matter of what team can hide their flaws the best against the provincial rival.
Yeah, that's ultimately where I'm at there too.
And, as much as you're right, the Flames haven't shown they can do it. I think the Flames might have more drive to do it this year. After the big loss to the Oilers, the change in culture, I think there's going to be that, guys, we've got to do this.
I really feel like Kadri is going to be a huge difference maker in this organization. Like, I really do feel like he is a guy that has the ability. And I think the one thing with the Flames last year is they never had that person that said, you know what, fuck you, McDavid, you're not going to do this anymore. And I think Kadri has that. Sorry, McDavid, you're not going to be scoring the way that you score. I'm not going to allow this anymore. I think the Flames in previous iterations
were too soft.
Were too soft. You're right. They were too soft.
I've said a few times they enjoyed watching McDavid play like the rest of us. He's coming down the ice and they'd sit there and go, oh, wow. Oh, shit. That was our net.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think you've got some guys like Weegar. I think you've got some guys like even Big Z, I'll give him credit, who are also going to be willing to put the hit on McDavid.
Yeah. 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 I think the other thing is too,
but I think you can't just neutralize McDavid. You need someone to do the offense for you. And I really think this could be the year that we really appreciate what we have in Elias Lindholm in that respect.
Yeah. Now the other I'm glad you brought up Lindholm because I think this is the other conversation. I still don't think the Flames need a captain. I still think that I'm with Daryl. There's no need to put a C on anybody here. I think you just let this group develop its leadership core and keep going that way. I honestly do not think you need to put a C on anybody. And I know that was with
8 of 22 players being new, I don't think you have a captain yet. I think we will by the end of the year. But I think that captain has to emerge. And maybe that's the guy, Kevin, who gets them over the Edmonton hump. Maybe that's the guy who comes out in the first game when they're down 2-0, makes the big speech and turns the team around and does the same thing in the Vegas game. Like, I think by playoffs this year, the Flames will have 2 C's on somebody's jersey. But I think that I hate saying the C because they already have a C, but they will have the C on the Blasty jersey for somebody. But I don't know you start with an artificial captain. I think you've got to see who brings themselves to. I mean, is Michael Backlund a leader? I don't think it has to be your top guy. I've said for a few years, maybe Lucic is your captain. Like, I think that needs to sort itself out in the room. It's not about fans. It's not about media. Who's the leader in the room? Maybe Trevor Lewis is the leader in the room.
The other thing that Daryl talked about that I thought was really interesting around that is the whole idea about being a captain in a Canadian market. And that was I wonder, like, I wouldn't say it's Lucic. I mean, I don't know if I would put it on Lucic, but I think in terms of the PR stuff, going out into the community and doing all the hobnobbing and all of that, almost would make sense to have a bottom six guy do that as opposed to a top six guy, a top player do that, because it gives that, it just takes something off a player's plate. You know,
it does, but I think at the same time it doesn't. If you're the sick kid in the children's hospital, do you want Lewis to come sign your autograph, or do you want Huberdeau to do it? Right? I think,
but
if
Huberdeau would do it without the C or not, though.
Maybe, but I think that's that role of that guy, right? If there's a new opening for a new library, they have the captain there. Who's the guy that you want to do that? I can see both sides, but I think it has to be a veteran guy. And I think so often we see it, even McDavid. I mean, what makes him a leader just because he's the best guy? I think it's going to go to one of those veteran guys, either a guy like Kadri, a guy like Lucic, a guy like Tanev. I think you need a guy over 30 to be your captain in a Canadian market.
Yeah, I'm just going to look back here. Just give me a second. Los Angeles King captain. Since I'm trying to remember if the Kings had a captain when Sutter had.
I believe Kopitar was their captain, was he not?
Yeah, no. When Sutter was coaching that team, it was Matt Green and Dustin Brown, and then Matt Green and Anze Kopitar. Yeah. So Dustin Brown was the captain for years, and I wouldn't call Dustin Brown a top tier. I mean, he was a solid player in the National Hockey League. He's going to get a statue in LA, but I wouldn't call him the greatest player in hockey history or anything. So
no, but he was paid like a top tier player there.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think, I think it's going to be one of those older guys. I think it'll be one of them who emerges, but I just don't see the need to put a C on a jersey. I mean, if you can and Daryl said it last year, we all wear a C on our chest on this team, right? I think Daryl Sutter was the captain last year, and I think that leader has to emerge this year, especially with so much change.
And Devin has always said that too. Daryl Sutter is the captain of the team, and it almost makes the most sense because just the way that he is able to speak to the media, and it's not always articulate in a sense, but he says what he needs to say in the media.
Yeah.
And
we don't really know. I could honestly see Kadri emerging that way. I could see, again, a guy with a ring, the players rally behind him, he becomes that leader. He's good enough in the media. I mean, let's be honest, Giordano was never the best media guy either.
No.
Right? The last real media captain we had was Jerome. Jerome was great with the media. Everyone loved talking to him. He, I think, enjoyed doing some of that. Even before Jerome, I mean, we had Conroy as captain. He was good at that. So, I mean, it's part of your captain's job, but they don't need to be the most photogenic guy.
No. Yeah, I think that the whole idea of putting the C on the heart of the C on your heart, I just don't think it's complete. It's not necessary at this point. I just think, again, just let a
leader emerge. And I think if they decide they want an interim leader, it could be a guy like a Lucic or a Kadri. And they don't need to be your captain forever and ever more for the 8 years of the contract. I mean, we had Conroy for a year or two, and then he gave it to Jerome. Maybe you just give it to somebody and say, Nazem, you're the leader. You'll hold this C until the next guy is ready, and you decide that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're not the only ones. I mean, there's I think a handful of teams this season that have no captain so far.
Yeah. Winnipeg's going without one. They took it away from Blake Wheeler. I don't know if Ottawa named one.
And I think that also says something about the role of the captain. I think that it's less important than it used to be. I think that, we're seeing a lot of these teams leadership by committee. And I think, even talking to the media, that role is changing. I just don't know that the role of captains is as important as it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that for sure. Well, the game's about to start.
Huberdeau's sister is doing the anthems tonight.
Yes. That's very exciting. He's immersing himself well into the Calgary community.
He is.
Which I think is a good thing as well. And yeah. So I think we're gonna have will be a great year. And you guys are going to be continuing to record on Sundays.
Yeah, we are going to record most Sundays unless there's a Flames game on Sunday, and then we'll figure it out maybe before, maybe after. But our show will come out every Monday. So we generally record on Sunday. Our awesome producer, Peter Marino, does his magic, and then we release our show on Mondays.
We don't have an awesome producer. We just have me. And
well, Sean. You know what? You know what? Maybe for future considerations, we can send you ours.
Maybe. Yeah, something we can talk about. We are...
Or if you want to send us a pick in the hockey podcaster entry draft, we'll talk.
Oh, the pick in the shifted, a draft pick, a fourth round pick for Peter Marino.
It's gonna have to be higher than fourth.
Okay, well we'll negotiate something. But we'll leave it here. Monday. So again, Monday's Fireside Chat. We are working our schedule out because my schedule has turned wonky with working at News 1130. Just trying to figure out what my schedule, not that my schedule is, it may change every once in a while. So we're trying to make sure that we can have a consistent day to talk hockey and get all of that done, do the Canucks per podcast and the Flames one as well. So we're trying to figure that out, but keep abreast with us. We're still going to be recording. We're still going to be doing stuff. It just may not be on the same day. It's fluid. That's the broadcast industry. Fluid.
It makes it more fun.
It absolutely does.
Pop-up podcasting.
Pop-up podcast. Yes. Hi, we have a podcast. Yes. Yes. Well, maybe we can podcast from anywhere now. Anyway.
There you go.
You can follow Sean Beardy Canuck 03, Tyler TNOBLE, Devin Gordhow 09, Chris out in Vegas, Schneids SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVOLE. Shifts and Pucks, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. We thank you for watching and listening. Good luck to the Flames, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now. And at Fireside Podcast.
You can find us wherever you can find podcasts.
That's true. But you said all of your stuff. Did you say all of your stuff, or
I did not, no.
Okay, say all of your stuff.
All right, so you can find us at firesidechat.ca on Twitter. We're at Fireside Podcast, Facebook.com/FiresideChat. Instagram, we're FiresideChat_podcast, or again, wherever fine podcasts are found. Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. If you find your podcast there, you'll find us.
Yes. So thank you for listening and watching. We'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.